To the players, reality is one against one, move and counter move, helmet to helmet. Nowhere is this conflict more evident than at the fringe of battle where the receiver and cornerback match glares. Here, cunning and speed determine the victor. One-on-one, the battle where the loser bleeds alone on an open field.
Because football season never ends, this is Intentional Grounding with Pat Grothier on Brookdale Student Radio 90.5 The Night.
Welcome, everybody, to Intentional Grounding. That voice you just heard, he was on our show last week, my father, John. You can hear that show again. We started recording the shows. I put them up on SoundCloud now. Intentional Grounding's on pretty much everything social networking you can think of. We're at soundcloud.com/intentionalgrounding. Of course, as you all know, Twitter at INT_grounding, Instagram at intentional grounding, Facebook.com/intentional grounding. It's on Google+, it's on YouTube, so we're everywhere. If you want to listen to this week's show afterwards, if you can only catch half of it, it'll be up on SoundCloud right afterwards. So we'll get right into it as usual with 5 and Out. Top 5 NFL headlines of the week start here with the St. Louis Rams head coach, Jeff Fisher, who's been a head coach in the Football League for years now, used to be with the Tennessee Titans. He said during the Rams-Browns game this past weekend, Bernie Kosar, who is a former NFL quarterback for the Browns and now color commentator for the team, he was just ripping the team apart, ripping the Rams apart during the broadcast. A lot of stuff that was, I went back and watched the game to see if some of his comments were, the way he said them might have been bad, but what he was getting at might have been true, and half of them weren't. He was just ripping the team for no apparent reason. Jeff Fisher says he lost a lot of respect for him, and, I haven't followed the guy much, so, I'd never had respect for him in the first place, but now I have none for him because a lot of stuff he was saying was ridiculous. There was an incompletion that was intended for rookie Tavon Austin, their new wide receiver out of the draft. He said, quote, "I really think that he didn't overthrow him and that Austin has to make that catch in the NFL. I see why Sam Bradford has been struggling watching how bad these receivers have been for him." And if it's the play that I saw too, because I tried to watch most of the game to see what he was talking about, it was way overthrown if it was the pass I was thinking about when Bradford and Tavon Austin were still in the game. Another one here, after a Nick Johnson drop, another wide receiver of the team, he said, quote, "That is actually not a bad throw. These St. Louis receivers are horrible. That's a drop there." So he went off and said, he was, of course, former Browns quarterback. He went on to heavily criticize the receivers coach, Ray Sherman, and backup quarterback Kellen Clemens, talking about when he had met the Pope at the time, and he got an autograph for him, and he just went, it was really ridiculous. Since then, the Browns have issued an apology. I believe Bernie Kosar has went to Jeff Fisher and the Rams on his own, or probably not on his own. He was probably told to by the Browns to apologize to them. Jeff Fisher said nothing, but he said, talked with the utmost respect, said the Browns organization is a first-class organization from top to bottom, has been that for years and years and years. Said, I guess I'm a little disappointed. I feel bad for them that they had someone doing their broadcast feel the need to speak that way about players, specifically on our teams and coaches for that matter. He said, I'm surprised that Bernie has such a lack of respect for players in this game. To be honest with you, I lost a lot of respect for him. It's highly unlikely he knew anything about our football team, but felt the need to make those comments. I don't think they were justified. And I agree with Jeff Fisher. I don't think most of them were justified either. When it's a big difference when you're, a shock jock on a local radio station and when you're doing a national broadcast for a football game. There's certain things you can and can't say. You can criticize a team and to a certain degree, but I heard I can't remember, the name is escaping me right now. I heard somebody on NFL Network talking about it, say you analyze the game. You're an analyst. You're not there to just completely tear into these teams. So move on from that there. Jets have been in a little bit with, we'll talk about, of course, like I said, if you guys have been paying attention on any of the social networking stuff, we're going to be doing a whole preseason week 1 recap. If you watched any of the games this week, one of the bigger headlines coming out of one of the quarterback competitions was Jets rookie quarterback Geno Smith. He sprained his ankle. It looked... The whole play was a little bit awkward. He did practice the other day, so he's back out on the field. But from the reports that were saying he was limping all around. Coach Marty Morningweg was yelling at him to stop limping. So Rex Ryan said today he's declining to comment on who will be the starting quarterback for this upcoming game against Jacksonville. The play that he tweaked his ankle on was kind of awkward from the start. It was a sloppy double play action. It was horribly designed. It might have been a great design play, but horribly executed. He had pressure on his left, started to scramble towards his left, and tripped on just a mean blade of artificial turf, and that's where he sprained his ankle. He spoke to reporters on the other day on how Morningweg told him about Brett Favre and how he played through every injury. So he's trying to, maybe channel a little bit of that to push through the injury and see if he can get the next start. Who knows? Sanchez, they said, lit it up in practice the other day, had a couple of 50-yard bombs to a couple of receivers, beat Antonio Cromartie on a pump fake. So who knows? We'll get into the games later and what I thought of how everybody did. Pittsburgh, this is a rough one. Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver Plaxico Burress suffered a significant shoulder injury during practice on Thursday. Plaxico landed awkwardly on his right arm after going over two DBs to make a catch. It's reportedly a torn rotator cuff that he did have surgery for. It's going to end his season and could possibly end his career. He's getting towards the tail end of it. Not many teams are going to want to pick up a guy like that who is, just coming off a major surgery. And since he's gotten back in the league, hasn't been a huge threat of, what he used to be before the whole shooting in the jail sentence and everything like that. Another bit of bad news for the Steelers. Tight end Matt Spaeth, who they got, who he's expected to miss 8 to 10 weeks with a foot injury, as reported on Friday by the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. They had picked him up when their usual tight end, Heath Miller, who was on the physically unable to perform list, went down with a knee injury. So it's leaving them lacking at the tight end position pretty bad. The only player left on the roster with a shred of NFL experience is David Paulson, a 7th-round pick in last year's draft. So a couple tight end receivers, when I was writing up my notes, a couple of the free agent tight ends out there were Dallas Clark, but I'll talk about that in Veteran Watch later. He just got picked up. And the only other one I really saw worth looking at was Kevin Boss, who played for the Giants during their first Super Bowl run. Then he went to the Raiders and just recently ended with the Chiefs. So he's still out there. Could they be picking him up? It's all going to depend on how these two injuries pan out for them. Next one up here is the charge. Oh, no, yeah. After practice on Sunday, this was a weird one. Running back Joe McKnight of the New York Jets. He's been battling a couple injuries throughout training camp. Spoke to reporters without really saying anything. It was kind of strange. Let me pull up all the questions they asked him because it was a very bizarre couple of days for him in general. So after practice, and this is the thing is that this could possibly be him being a jokester, but this could also be related to a very serious issue. He has suffered a couple of head injuries. So if this is related to a head injury, this really isn't much of a laughing matter, but over, altogether, it was a very strange interview. Asked him, one of the reporters asked him, "How are you feeling?" "I'm not getting into that right now." "Do you know when you'll be cleared? Do you know when you'll be cleared to be full go?" "I'm not getting into that right now." Did you go through a period of time where you felt out of it or woozy?" "I'm not getting into that right now." "How did you get hurt?" "Not getting into that right now." "Did you have to be cleared by an independent doctor?" "No." Over and over again. I answered about 7 times, "I'm not getting into that right now." Towards the end, one of the reporters asked him, there's a dispute going on with Time Warner and CBS. When he turned over, asked a Jets PR official, "This guy asking me about Time Warner and CBS right now? Are you serious?" The PR official replied, "He's not getting into that one right now." So and then the next day at practice, he was basically, he was kind of collapsing on the field. Did a couple of, 75 yards. He dropped to his knee a couple different times. He only lasted less than an hour in practice. He was carted off after crashing down to the grass while trying to haul in a pass. He received oxygen from the training staff, and then presumably from the locker room, he just started ripping somebody on Twitter. I think that he thought he was a reporter, like a beat writer for the Jets, when it was just a fan. So it was kind of strange. He started off the tweets. He said, "I don't care anymore." The fan replied, "About time you get released. Good luck and stay healthy." And then he said, "Now I'm getting into that." And then he replied to the fan saying, "Are you outside?" The fan replied to him, "Yes, I'm outside." So, like I said, whether this is related to his head injury or he's just frustrated and was playing, just being an idiot in the interview, it's very hard to say. But he was being a solid special teams guy for the Jets. Hopefully he can come back, but with these head injuries, it's tough. And then the last one here on 5 and Out, the Chargers have suffered a lot of A lot of injuries to the wide receiver position. Last week, we talked about real quick on the injury report, Denario Alexander went out for the season with a torn ACL. Now Malcolm Floyd strained his right knee. Originally, when the practice first happened, when it first happened in practice, they thought that it was a torn ACL, so they were pretty scared about that. But they got a lot of good news that it's only a strain. He suffered it in a collision with cornerback Sharice Wright during practice on Monday, but they were very lucky in that. I mean, losing that star wideout in Malcolm Floyd. I mean, in Denario Alexander and Malcolm Floyd going out for, who knows how long, it's really tough to them. This only leaves Eddie Royal as their number one receiver. Vincent Brown is up there, as well as I read a report of Robert Meacham, who's the other wide receiver there, being broken down, that, he could possibly get released. I mean, Phillip Rivers is going to have a rough year if this is the case. There's a couple free agent wide receivers out there. I took a look. Brandon Lloyd, who was on the Patriots last year. Lauren Robertson with the Jaguars. He visited with a couple people. He visited with the Jets this offseason, also with the Indianapolis Colts. Randy Moss, I don't think he'll get picked up. Steve Breston, who was with the Cardinals for a while. He was with them during the Kurt Warner years. You have Donald Jones, who was a part of the Buffalo Bills, Deion Branch, Early Doucette, and Dante Stallworth. So there's some known names out there, wide receiver, if they really need to go out and get somebody. I believe I just saw something here that, what's his name? Patrick Creighton. Yeah, no, Patrick Creighton got picked up. It was Robert Meacham. Yeah, Robert Meacham did get released, actually. Let me take a look here. Oh, I'm sorry, Devery Henderson. I mix up all those Saints wide receivers. Drew Brees had so many of them. Redskins released Devery Henderson, so maybe he could go there. You never really know at this point. All right, so we're getting out of 5 and out here, going into Veteran Watch coming up. So a lot of stuff has been going on with veterans. It was really the only thing happening to make this part of the segment. So Dallas Clark, like I said earlier, he agrees with the Super Bowl champion Ravens. 34-year-old, 10-year NFL veteran, last played with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. He previously played for the Colts with Peyton Manning for his whole career. Next one up here is Brandon Stokely. So the Ravens made a couple of wide receiver moves, picking up Brandon Stokely as well. He was another guy who played for Peyton all those years. He's a 14-year veteran. They signed him to a 1-year deal. Played his first 4 years for Baltimore, so he's going back to where he started his career. Never had more than a 400-yard season there. Played for 4 years in Indy, where he had his best career year with Peyton. He had over 1,000 yards. Stokely last suited up with Denver last season, where he reunited with Manning, picking up almost 555 yards and 5 touchdowns. Next one up here is, get my papers in order. Linebacker Bart Scott, who was a guy who was one of my favorites on the Jets just because of his attitude. He was pretty decent when they first picked him up, when Rex Ryan first came into New York. He really started to take a bit of a decline. The 11-year veteran was released by the Jets after a decline in performance since his start with the team 4 years ago. He also suffered a few injuries last year, a turf toe injury. There's no teams reported yet by anybody, but Adam Schefter did say that he is drawing interest from a few teams. No names yet. After wide receiver Joe Morgan of the Saints tore his ACL, the New Orleans Saints looked to add depth with the signing of wide receiver Patrick Creighton, who previously played with the Cowboys. He played with the Chargers 2 years ago, but he didn't play last season, so he sat home all last season. Nobody called him up. So we'll take a quick break from there. We'll get back into it later. We have the preseason Week 1 recap coming up. No ridiculous NFL story. There's actually one thing that's kind of ridiculous that I'll talk about a little bit, but we'll get into it right after this quick. All right, welcome back, everybody, to Intentional Grounding. I'm your host, Pat Grothier here. So we just did a little 5 and out. Get into a couple things that we couldn't fit into this week's show. So Jamal Charles the other day at camp sprained his foot. It was only had as a foot strain, not sprain. So he had 2 orthopedic surgeons look at it, and they said it's only a mild strain. So hopefully he will. It's not a high ankle, so that's the good news. This is what I'll talk about the most ridiculous in a second. But J.J. Watt, who's the Pro Bowl defensive end for the Houston Texans, said that he wants to play on offense. He's been lobbying since he first got there to get a chance to play on the Texans' offense. Gary Kubiak has shot him down. He was a little bit mad when they lined him up at wide receiver in the Pro Bowl, so we'll see where that goes with that. They need him on defense as much as possible. The Bengals started the Hard Knocks for the last 2 weeks. I was able to catch some of it last night. DVR screwed up a little bit, but Margus Hunt, big dude. He's a new defensive end they got. He's from Estonia. And the whole episode was kind of centered around him. They were all, poking fun at him, but he was going right back at it, so it was good fun there. James Harrison, who's been on there, was reported saying that HBO shouldn't be at the Bengals camp, that they don't deserve to be there. All the players are putting in all the blood, sweat, and tears. James Harrison, when you see him on there, he's trying to avoid the cameras at all costs. So that's just him being him. He's looking. We'll talk about him later in the preseason. I thought he looked very good in the game. This is a big one here. Is that unions are telling players that HGH testing is getting closer. Like we were talking about a few weeks ago, they had a tentative agreement on the human growth hormone testing and the punishment. So the punishment came out that any player who tests positive for HGH, which will be a banned substance in the NFL, used to improve performance, will bring a 4-game suspension. So basically they're going to be allowed to test 8 players randomly from 5 teams each week. So they're going to be able to test up to 40 players a week. This is going to start happening this season, so don't be surprised if you start seeing some of these star guys go out with a couple game suspension for testing positive for HGH. Adrian Peterson, like we were talking about last week, he just reported saying that he's taking these PED accusations as a compliment. So, we're going to see where that goes with that. I'm hoping that a whole lot of players aren't getting busted for it. You never like to see that, but it's good to see that the guys who are taking it will get busted for it. So most ridiculous NFL story. I thought this one was just stupid with the NFL. I don't understand why they have to they feel like they just need to police every little aspect of it. Now, face masks. You need to get your face mask approved by the NFL. Robert Mathis, who's a defensive end for the Indianapolis Colts, and DeMarcus Ware for the Dallas Cowboys. They both have some crazy face masks. One that looks like a Predator, just some crazy looking designs on them. I don't understand why. They say in that it's they're determined that it's a prohibited non-standard face mask. It needs to get approved only for a medical reason. And you're going to have no medical reason to have some of these crazy designs. It's just an intimidation factor. It looks cool. The pictures of them, they look awesome. Something that when I played football, I played Pop Warner football, never really went past that. But when I did, I used to just wear the standard Emmitt Smith face mask. I don't understand how these guys can see past these, but if they want to wear them, more power to them. I don't see any reason why the NFL should stop them. So getting into preseason week 1 recap. It's in the books now. So go through that. Couple of all the games here. Start off with the Ravens versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'll rate every game. I'll tell you the score. I'll tell you who won the first team battle. Because it's preseason week 1. Take everything what I'm saying here with a little bit of a grain of salt because it's just, I'm being just maybe a little bit critical on some things. But all in all, it's preseason week 1. Every team is showing a very vanilla look. They're not really showing you what they're going to be doing in the regular season. Some starters are barely playing a series. So, I'm just saying what is happening that week. So start off with the champion Baltimore Ravens versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Josh Freeman, the quarterback for the Bucs, had a few good moments. Struggled a little bit, but Ray Rice, the running back for the Ravens, he had a short appearance, showed he's still solid. Had a few nice catches out of the backfield, scurried for a nice couple runs. Joe Flacco, the quarterback for the Ravens, he started a nice little hurry-up offense, which strung together a few good plays. I think it ended in a field goal. And then Mike Glennon, the second-string quarterback that they just picked up out of the draft, who he could give Josh Freeman a run for his money if he's not doing too well. Freeman comes out the first couple weeks, and he's not doing too well. Don't be surprised to see some reports saying that, Mike Glennon is getting some more time with the ones in practice. His first pass in the NFL, scrambles, lets one loose to a wide-open receiver for a 50-plus yard play. It was a really, really nice pass. Another news with the Bucs is that their general manager, Dominic Nixon, said that Darrelle Revis, the cornerback they just acquired from the Jets in the offseason for that big contract, he could play week 3 of the preseason. Revis played that down a little bit, saying, he's not sure if he can do that. But week 1 seems to be a pretty obtainable goal against, what everybody wants to see with Darrelle Revis going back, facing the Jets again. So we'll see if that happens. I thought the Bucs won the first team battle. Honestly, the Baltimore Ravens didn't show a whole lot, but the Ravens wound up winning the game 44-16. Those who aren't too familiar with preseason, especially with week 1, when you see it starts to get more towards the end, it's the same thing, but especially with week 1, the main starters, the guys who are going to be on the field for the rest of the season, they'll only play a series sometimes. Very rarely you'll see they'll play most of the first quarter. And then they start putting in the guys who are fighting for their jobs to get on this final 53-man roster that is set before the beginning of the season. So when you turn on a preseason game in the fourth quarter, you're going to see names that you've never seen before. And there's a chance that you won't ever see them. So the next one here is the Redskins versus the Tennessee Titans. No RG3, of course. He's not going to play in the preseason at all, Shanahan said. RG3 came back saying there's no kind of rift between him and Shanahan. He's doing what's best for him. He understands that, doing what's best for the team. He wants RG3 to have a long career, so there's nothing wrong with that. But their backup, Kirk Cousins, the quarterback for the Redskins who came in last year, he got some camera time when Griffin went down during the season last year with the ACL injury. I mean, this guy the way he played, it pains me knowing that he's just a backup on this team when he can literally probably go out and start on 7-8 different NFL teams with the Jets included. I'd love to see him go because he could win that quarterback battle in a second. The guy's a very, very solid passer. He's got great footwork. I think he's an amazing quarterback, and I think he's really just showcasing himself this season to be picked up after the offseason to go out in free agency and possibly get a starting role on one of these teams, which are still have these quarterback battles. No Alfred Morris played in this game. Jake Locker, who is the Tennessee Titans quarterback, he's still struggling even with the new additions at guard. But those additions at guard are huge. CJ2K, Chris Johnson, the running back for the Titans, he had a big 85-yard touchdown run. And it was mainly from the help of those new guards. They had coming out of the draft, Chance Warmack from North Carolina, and at a free agency, they had guard Andy Levitri coming through from the Buffalo Bills. You had Sean Green showing he isn't to be don't forget about him too. This is bringing everybody back, all the Titans fans and people who paid attention to Smash and Dash when they had Chris Johnson and Lendale White running that two-headed running attack. That was great every year. They both get close to 1,000 yards, if not more, every season. I thought that game, first teamers, they kind of tied. They both put up a touchdown, I believe. Washington won the game 22-21. So next up here is the Cleveland Browns versus St. Louis Rams. This is what I was talking about earlier with Jeff Fisher and Bernie Kosar with his comments on the team. No Trent Richardson, but I don't blame him for doing that. I believe they did say that he will play in this next preseason game. Darryl Richardson, who's the running back of the St. Louis Rams, I'm thinking he's going to win the battle. He looked very good, actually, with the loss of Steven Jackson to the Falcons. Isaiah Peed, who's the other running back there, who's fighting for a spot. He had a pretty costly fumble that is going to knock him down a lot. Brandon Weeden, the quarterback for the Browns, he looked great. Second year, this is weird saying it, but a second-year player that's 29 years old, he looked great in the Norv Turner offense. Talking to other Browns fans and people who paid attention to Weeden during college, that's where he made his money, was in the shotgun. And when he was with Pat Shurmur last year, he did not use Brandon Weeden to his strengths at all. So Brandon Weeden pulled together a very nice drive. We'll see how he does going into the season. Browns had a nice punt return, so the special teams is looking good. They don't have Josh Cribbs this year. I believe he's in Oakland now. But like I said earlier, the comments by Bernie Kosar were very unfair. I thought Cleveland won the first team battle, and they also did win the game 27-19. So this was the Monday night game on Friday night for ESPN. On Thursday night. They can't use Thursday night football because NFL Network does. This was Cincinnati versus Atlanta. They also showcased this game on Hard Knocks last night on the episode, the HBO special, that showcases a team during the preseason and training camp. It was nothing crazy out of Steven Jackson, the newly acquired running back for the Falcons from the Rams. It was a great screen to third wide receiver Harry Douglas that they strung together about maybe 40-yard play on that. No Julio Jones played, no A.J. Green played, so two big receivers on both sides of the ball were out of the game. James Harrison, like I was talking about before, he looked pretty comfortable in his transition because for his whole career, he played in the 3-4 Dick LeBeau defense. Now he's moving over to the 4-3 with Mike Zimmer, his new defensive coordinator. Mike Zimmer, by the way, on Hard Knocks, cursing his head off constantly. It's pretty funny. He's reminding me of Rex when the Jets did Hard Knocks a couple years ago. Geno Atkins looking solid as always. Guy's just a monstrosity. They're looking to get him a new deal as well. The two tight end look for the Bengals with Gresham and rookie Tyler Effert. I keep saying his name wrong. Tyler Effert. It's going to work. Tyler Effert, he struggled a little bit towards the beginning. Coaches got into him a little bit, and he started doing better, threw a couple nice blocks. But seeing him in camp pulling down these big balls, it's going to be a very, very good. The two tight end look is, everybody saw what it did for the Patriots in years past with Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski. So that's the new thing. You get these big athletic tight ends who are just a matchup nightmare because they're too fast for linebackers and they're too big for safeties and corners. So I think they're going to do well this year. Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, he's trying to complement the new weapons that Andy Dalton has. He's got A.J. Green. He's got Tyler Efford. He's got everybody there. Like I said, no A.J. Green playing. But there's a big question at who the number 2 wide receiver is of the team. You have Mohamed Sanu and Brandon Tate there. Sanu did pretty decent last year, in a more of a complimentary role. But they need a solid number 2 wide receiver to take some pressure off of A.J. Green, to, maybe stop drawing so many double teams. The guy's a great athlete, but, you can't last that long just being the only wide receiver there. Your team won't go very far. Osi Umenyiora, who was a free agent addition for the Falcons, they had a couple of splashes this year with Steven Jackson and Osi from the Giants. I thought he did very well, filling in the big shoes of John Abraham. He got some nice pressure on Andy Dalton. I think he's going to go into that role very well there. Just overall with the game, with the first-teamers, very poor offensive effort, but the defense on both sides of the ball were solid. First-team winner, I say Atlanta got it. Cincinnati won the game 34-10. Next one up here, this was a pretty uneventful game. Denver versus San Francisco. It was the first-teamers. I thought San Francisco won it. First impression, I thought LaMichael James is going to be good whenever Gore leaves. He's going to be a very solid addition for them. So I'm looking. I know the fans of 49ers are looking forward to that as well. Peyton Manning is still looking good, as well as Colin Kaepernick. They only had really one series for each major starter. The 49ers tied together a pretty nice first series that lasted, I think it took 6 minutes off the clock. It was a running back battle for Denver. It's still a stalemate. You saw Ronnie Hillman in there. Monte Ball got a few carries. No Sean Moreno. I didn't see much of him. But the first teamers, I thought San Francisco won it. Denver won the game 10-6. So next up here is Chargers versus the Seahawks. Phillip Rivers, this is a make-or-break season for him. Having those 2 losses at wide receiver isn't going to help much. You got Ryan Matthews, the running back, trying to stay healthy. The Hawks' first drive was ugly. The second one, too. The offensive line was getting handled by the Chargers. Russell Wilson barely had any time. The running game was non-existent. Marshawn Lynch didn't play, but the backup, the running game was non-existent. He was getting stopped at the line every play. San Diego won the first-team battle by far. Seattle pulled together the game 31-10 with the second and third teamers coming in after that. Next one here, Miami Dolphins versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was a bit of a Florida battle there. Nobody won the first-team battle. It was a poor effort on both sides. Both offenses had a sloppy first drives, 3-and-outs here and there. It felt like watching the game, it was a battle between the punters. Mike Wallace played a little bit, but he really didn't do much. He really didn't do much there. It was really starters stay out there for a while because it was nothing but 3-and-outs. It was always turning over the ball. So you had your first look at the NFL's first offensive weapon, the first ever listed at the position offensive weapon made up by the Jacksonville Jaguars, Denard Robinson. He lined up at wide receiver and running back, so you're going to see some more looks at him. And then the Jets game. This one, I was getting texts from my dad, texts from ESPN about it. Sanchez threw the pick, so we'll get into it. Reggie Bush, he looks like he could do pretty well there. He had a nice hurdle over one of the Jets defenders. Sanchez did have that rough pick six to start it off that had Jets fans thinking, he got nowhere in the offseason, that this was going to be Geno Smith's job to lose. But the next few drives, he didn't look horrible. He pulled together a touchdown. He had a nice over-the-middle pass to Jeff Cumberland, the tight end. So he didn't look terrible. He just had that. He made up for that pick six. Both guards, Willie Colon and Peterman, who previously played for the Lions, they looked great. The offensive line could be pretty solid this year, as well as the defensive line. Calvin Johnson, the wide receiver for the Detroit Lions, as well as quarterback Matt Stafford, they were picking apart the secondary when the first teamers were in there. Calvin Johnson had a few nice catches on D. Milliner. He had one on Cromartie. I think he had one on Kyle Wilson. D. Milliner, speaking of D. Milliner, the rookie cornerback we just got out of the draft, he had a nice look. Cromartie couldn't get his head around a lot. He looked like the rookie in this situation. And Geno Smith, like I talked about on that play before, even before the injury, what he suffered with his ankle, he didn't look all that great. I didn't think he really impressed all that much. The time is going to tell in the season. This is only the first week of the preseason, so we're going to have to see from here. We're going to take another quick break here, come back in about 4 minutes, and wrap up the rest of the games. We'll get into team talk later. We're going to finish the NFC East with the Philadelphia Eagles, so we'll see you back in a couple minutes. All right, everybody, welcome back to Intentional Grounding. I'm your host, of course, Pat Groth here. Speaking speaking of Geno Smith, just came in from Jets camp. He had a rough day at practice today. He took majority of the first team reps, so I guess his ankle is feeling a little bit better, or he's just sucking it up and going through it to try to get a leg up in this quarterback competition. He was out of sorts. Rich Samini reported he threw 3 interceptions in team drills and another in 7-on-7, and a few other passes were batted down by defensive backs. Mark Sanchez was on the scout team faced the scout team defense, so it wasn't a typical starters versus starters kind of situation. But he struggled a lot with his accuracy and made a couple of bad decisions. So whether he's just mentally not there, the ankle's really aggravating him it's kind of getting to him. We'll have to see if he even plays this upcoming week in Jacksonville. So we'll pick right back up where we left off with the preseason week 1 recap. Carolina Panthers versus the Chicago Bears. D'Angelo Williams, the running back for the Panthers, he had some nice rushes. In years past, you had it was like a 2 to 3 headed running attack from Carolina. You had D'Angelo Williams, you had Jonathan Stewart, and also I believe last year you had Mike Tolbert as well. So it's all broken out. Looks like D'Angelo Williams will get majority of the carries there now. The first Jay Cutler pass was picked off, led to a Cam Newton touchdown to Brandon LaFell. So that was not the first look you want to see out of Jay Cutler, but he kind of picked up a little bit after that. But Cam Newton also answered with a pick of his own. He threw a pick 6. So I thought the first teamers, they tied a bit in that aspect. They both threw a pick that led to a turnover that led to a touchdown. Carolina won the game 24-17. Wasn't a very eventful game. It was another one that it kind of just went by for a couple of series with the starters, and then that was it. Kansas City versus New Orleans. This was the first game I wanted to watch. I purchased the NFL has a preseason package. I got that so I could watch all the games. It wasn't too much money, so I just wanted to make sure that I could get all these games, report on them to you guys, because not everybody wants to watch all these preseason games. So I did it for you. You're welcome, all right? You guys are very welcome for that. I had to suffer through these preseason games for you guys, all right? So Kansas City versus New Orleans, I thought this was a pretty good game. It showcased Alex Smith in the offense for the first time. They looked really good, and they could possibly make, when I did the playoff predictions a couple weeks ago, that wild card spot isn't as outlandish as I thought it could be. They could really make a run for it. They had a 14-play drive that ended with a nice touchdown. You had Jamal Charles out of the backfield catching a few passes, was really nice. Hopefully he comes off of that injury quickly and they can get him in for the regular season. Having a guy go down like that in Jamal Charles is big for them. But Dexter McCluster, who is a running back wide receiver, kind of a hybrid, he also had a few nice catches. Both tackles of the Chiefs, the newly drafted Eric Fisher and the veteran Brandon Albert, they're going to anchor this line very well. So this is with Andy Reid. Andy Reid was running it very well. I didn't realize they had what's his name from the Jets. He was he's their defensive coordinator now. His name's escaping me for some reason. But speaking of defensive coordinators, Rob Ryan on the other side of the ball with the Saints, his defense was getting picked apart by the Chiefs' first team. Like I said, I'll put the disclaimer out there again. It's preseason week 1, so I'm just judging this game. This isn't saying that the defense is going to be horrible this season, but they need to do a little bit of work. I'm sure he ripped into him after that game. Chiefs won the first team series by far, but New Orleans wound up winning the game 17-13. But that's going to be two teams that I'm expecting to do pretty well this season. Next one up here is the Houston Texans versus the Minnesota Vikings. You had a tip ball interception by Christian Ponder, the Vikings quarterback, in his only series. So his only series didn't end out too well. An interception that wasn't really his fault, so that's always unfortunate for the quarterback. No Arian Foster, no Andre Johnson. I don't even think Adrian Peterson suited up, so you didn't see a lot of the marquee names out there. You had the newly drafted wide receiver for the Houston Texans out there who was looking pretty good. Not Cordell Patterson. Cordell Patterson, who is the newly drafted wide receiver for the Vikings, was looking pretty good as well. Houston won that first team battle, I think. They also won the game, 27-13. Arizona versus Green Bay. This one, when people saw the score, it shocked everybody a little bit because, maybe a couple years ago, this would be a good matchup. But in the normal season, in the regular season, this would normally be in the other way with a much more crushing victory. Arizona won the game 17-0. The first look of Carson Palmer and Bruce Arians as the head coach. Carson Palmer, the quarterback coming over in free agency this season from the Raiders. The running backs had a few different looks for the Cardinals. all looking pretty bad, to be honest. They didn't have a lot of solid runs. You didn't see Mendenhall, though, and a lot of reports coming out of camp is that Rashard Mendenhall is going to be Bruce Arians' guy, a guy who's Rashard Mendenhall has been suffering through injuries most of his career. Previously played with the Pittsburgh Steelers through most of his career. He did end there last year. Green Bay's running attack, they had James Starks listed at the number 1, it looked like. It looks like he might go into the season being the number 1 unless Eddie Lacy does something. I didn't see a whole lot of him. I forgot to keep watching the game to see a little bit of Eddie Lacy. But Aaron Rodgers had a huge bomb to James Jones. It was a big one. So he's still showing that, he's never going to lose a step until he's about to retire. Larry Fitzgerald is a guy I'm hoping that he can go back to his 100-yard seasons with Carson Palmer. That's a guy I'm really pulling for. He's a great guy. He does a lot of community work. Phenomenal athlete, and I want to see him go back to his days that, when he had the season with Kurt Warner where they got to the Super Bowl. They lost, but I want to see Larry Fitzgerald going back to those days. Both teams had a touchdown by the first teamers. You're saying 17-0, but James Starks, he got robbed out of that touchdown. I don't understand how the refs didn't see it. I watched the replay a couple times, and the ball clearly passed the plane of the end zone before his knee went down. So I say it was a tie between the first teamers, but Arizona did win it 17-0. Oakland Raiders face the Dallas Cowboys. Whenever I see an Oakland Raiders home game, I'm still amazed that they're playing on that baseball field. It still blows my mind that they're doing that. This one wasn't much of a great game either. You had old Glass Bones, Darren McFadden. He had a few nice runs. DeMarco Murray, another guy who got injured last year. He was looking pretty good as well. So if those two guys can stay healthy, they'll do well for their teams. You saw the first look of Matt Flynn, the newly acquired quarterback for the Oakland Raiders. Him and Tony Romo got punished on a few sacks in the first series. But surprisingly, the first teamers did play a good amount. They played mostly into the first quarter and a little bit into the second. And then once they got into the second, they put everybody else out. The Raiders had a nice blocked field goal on Romo's last drive that I believe led them to a touchdown. So, overall, I thought it was a tie. I went back and forth because, I'm writing down, I wrote tie, crossed it out, saw Dallas had a good drive, crossed it out. And once the Raiders, kind of came back at him with that blocked field goal, I said the first teamers had a tie overall. But Oakland did wind up winning the game 19-17. The Giants versus the Pittsburgh Steelers is the next one up. Giants had a nice block punt after a bad first drive by Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh looking to just bounce back after that mediocre season they had last year. But the Giants choked on the 5-yard line. I don't know what happened. They got handed a golden opportunity. Nice block punt, got them within the 5-yard line, and they choked. But they did make up for it. Eli had a big 57-yard touchdown to Cruz right over the seam in the middle, and it was a very, very nice catch and pass. I say Giants won the first team battle. They also did win the game 18-13 here. So we're wrapping up the last couple games. This is the last game. I'll talk about the Eagles and Patriots game during Eagles Talk next. But we had the Buffalo Bills versus the Indianapolis Colts. So this was the last game of the preseason week. Preseason, it starts tomorrow, so you're going to see games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we got games coming up all week. So get excited for that. Only 4 weeks of preseason. We are 22 days away from the start of the regular season. So this is very, very exciting. We're only 22 days away. So I'm very excited to get into the regular season. Buffalo versus Indy. It was Ahmad Bradshaw didn't play. They actually just had to activate him off the PUP list, the physically unable to perform list, due to a violation they gave him. He took a couple handoffs during training camp. I believe that it's a violation. He can't do anything when he's on the physically unable to perform list. So he is now activated. Whether he'll get much playing time, I'm not sure. Vic Ballard is still going to be the starting back until Bradshaw can come in and prove that he deserves to be there. CJ Spiller is going to be a great addition to them now that after last season, he's actually getting a chance to fully prove himself. Could be the new offensive coordinator. I tie it mainly to Fred Jackson going down with the injury last year, where I think he's got a 6-yard average, CJ Spiller, so very explosive. He had a few, I think a 17-yard run and then a 13-yard run. You had your first looks at E.J. Manuel. Kevin Cobb still healing from slipping on the mat. He has that knee injury. I believe he will play this week. We'll have to keep an eye on that. I'll keep you guys updated on that as well. But first teamers, it was a bit of a tie. You didn't have a whole lot of action in this one either, but Buffalo did win the game 44-20. And this is something that the Colts owner, Jim Irsay, he went out and publicly tore into the team, saying that he's sorry to the fans that this was an embarrassing loss, and the Colts brass heard it, the front office it's preseason. That's the thing I'm trying to say. It's preseason week 1 to tear into the team that much. I don't get it, but that's Jim Irsay. The Irsays have always run the franchise very strange, going back to the whole John Elway 85 or 83 draft, 85 or 83. I'm mixing it up right now. So, next up here, we got Eagles talk, wrapping up the NFC East this week with the Philadelphia Eagles. This is the main headline going in. Everybody talking about the Eagles before any kind of training camp or mini camp started was Chip Kelly, the new head coach, coming in from Oregon, coming in with this new fast-paced, hurry-up, quick offense. So once we get into, you didn't see much of it in the game, but Eagles last year had a 4-12 record. It was a very bad season for them. They were only 1-5 in the division. I had them ranked at 23rd in the post-draft power rankings that we did here at Intentional Grounding. ESPN had them at 25th. They did acquire a couple known names in the offseason. Linebacker Connor Barwin, free agent from the Texans. They had a couple of safeties. They got Kenny Phillips from the Giants through free agency, and Patrick Chung from the New England Patriots. Running back Felix Jones is going to come in from the Dallas Cowboys. Then also their draft picks. They had the first-round pick, offensive tackle Lane Johnson, second-round tight end Zach Ertz, and then Matt Barkley, who's the third. I don't think he's in the quarterback competition that's between Michael Vick and Nick Foles right now, but people are saying that he was their fourth-round pick out of USC. They also did lose a couple of big names. Defensive tackle Cullen Jenkins went to the New York Giants. You had cornerback Nnamdi Asomugha, who went to the 49ers. Asomugha, when he went to the Eagles, it was, I don't know if it was a personnel thing or a coach's thing or what, but he was up there. Him and Revis were, you could argue either one of them being the best cornerback in the league when he was in Oakland. And when he went to the Eagles, he was non-existent there. And also their other cornerback that they acquired in that offseason, Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, left. He's at the Broncos now. So whether those two guys are going to go back to the caliber that they were playing at before they went to the Eagles, who knows? But like I said, with the preseason, they always show a very vanilla look. So you didn't get to see a whole lot of this crazy offense that everyone's talking about with Chip Kelly. The quarterback competition between Vic and Nick Foles, like I said, that's the other main headline. It's still ongoing. Vic had a beautiful pass to Deshaun Jackson. I think he's in the league. He won the first, open forum of the quarterback competition, where everybody go on the main stage and show off that, he deserves it. I thought Vic won it. The defense got ran all over by Stevan Ridley in the first drive. It was all him in that first drive. You didn't see any of LaShawn McCoy in the preseason opener. And then the second drive from the Patriots, it was all Brady. He picked that secondary apart. And I thought the Patriots won the first team battle. And they also did win the game 31-22. So the Eagles need to make a couple improvements on that. Michael Vick did look pretty good with the first teamers, but the defense needs to kind of hone it in a little bit and get all of that. Like I said, the preseason, it's just a look. So we're going to see more of Chip Kelly's offense coming in 22 days, everybody. 22 days, we're starting kickoff. So we're going to wrap it up here at Intentional Grounding. Like I said, all the shows are going to be recorded now, as long as the computer works. Everything. We're on almost everything social networking that matters. So, as usual, Twitter at @INT_grounding. Also, Facebook.com/intentionalgrounding. Instagram, too, it's at intentional grounding. SoundCloud.com/intentional grounding. We're on YouTube, Intentional Grounding. Google Plus, Intentional Grounding. I'm going to try to keep everything updated. I got all the apps on my phone, so I'm always going crazy with those. But we're going to come back next week. We'll talk a little bit. I don't know if, we'll see how it goes with the week. Any kind of big news comes in. Maybe I won't do a whole week 2 recap. In the coming weeks, we'll talk about fantasy football. That's huge now. I've been playing for the last 5 years, but I think I've made my decision. I don't think I'm playing this year. I said I would last year, and people listening, friends and family that I always play with, I got to let you down a little bit, but I don't think I'm going to be doing fantasy football this year. I said I wouldn't. I'm going to stick with it. I made a promise. I'm going to do it. So I will still help you guys out because I did I know a little bit about fantasy football. I'd make the playoffs I don't think I ever won it, but I always make the playoffs a little bit. Usually make my money back. But we'll get into that as well once the season starts to come around. A lot of people are having their drafts in the coming weeks too. So we'll get into that in the next few weeks. We'll come back next week, and thank you all for joining us again.